Hello students, this is Uttkarsh, Bhargava. In this lecture, I'm gonna finish the chapter number 5th of unit number 3rd of class 11th Economics, Indian Economic Development. In the last video, we are done with the topics like what are the causes of poverty. Then we talked about the measures to remove the poverty, that how we can remove the poverty. Like the first one was through the agriculture development. Means when we know this thing that most of the labor force of Indian economy is dependent upon the agriculture sector, because we know this thing that India is an agriculture oriented economy, and if we want to remove the poverty, then we must focus on that particular sector. So that is how we can eradicate poverty, by developing the agriculture sector. Then second was the control over inflation. We all know this thing that the inflation is nothing but the persistent increase in the price of goods and services in an economy in a particular period of time. The inflation is one of those factors which can easily cut down the purchasing power of your money. And when you are poor, you have lack of money, then that inflation can decrease the purchasing power of that limited money, which leads to making poor more poorer. So that is how the inflation can leads to poverty, and by decrease the level of inflation, the government can cure the problem of poverty. Then the third point is increase in generation of employment opportunities. So if the government targets to increase the employment opportunities, in that case you are providing them to earn their living. If you are providing them a particular opportunity to earn their living, in that case there would be lesser scope for becoming a poor. And government is trying to do this thing just by promoting only one thing, which I told you in the last lecture also, by promoting the industrialization in India, because industries are the only thing under which we can absorb the increasing pressure of the population. Usually in the industries, if we are utilizing a labor intensive technique which requires more of labor and less of capital, then it may absorb a lot of population. So by increasing the employment opportunities, we can curb the problem of poverty. Then the next point was minimum needs program for the poor, that government should construct a plan which can provide the minimum needs to the poor, so that they can easily fulfill their basic needs and they won't be considered as poor if the government be able to provide them their minimum needs like food, clothing, shelter, education and health. Even I told you about these things also, that these particular things are provided by the government at a very nominal rates nowadays, especially if we talk about the food, shelter, education and health. So government is trying to fulfill the minimum needs of the poor so that they won't be considered as poor. Then regional balanced growth. Regional balanced growth, that they must focus on the overall development of all these states. There should not be like this, that some state whose growth rate is so high and there are the other states who are still underdeveloped. Now that will surely create a big problem for the government also. Like nowadays what we are feeling in the metropolitan cities, that they are overcrowded. The cities like Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Pune, Hyderabad, these cities are becoming so overpopulated. Like Delhi and Mumbai, the intensity of the per square kilometer population is really very high. Very, very high, especially in Delhi. A lot of people are there. So this will automatically cause a lot of problem. Overcrowding comes up with a lot of problems, a lot of failure in the manpower planning actually, and planning in the infrastructure development as well. And the per head availability of the infrastructure would eventually decrease. So balanced growth should be there, and that balanced growth of these states would surely decrease the scope of poverty in the deprived and the least advantaged areas. Then sixth is the development of industries. As I told you before, that if the government wants to absorb the pressure of this increasing population, then they must focus on only one thing, that is the industrialization. Because industries are the only thing which has the power to absorb big labor force. But you have to create a combination that promote industrialization along with the labor intensive technique. Only in that case you will be able to absorb the big labor force. Because if we'll promote industrialization, but side by side the industries are using the capital intensive technique, in that case there would not be any use and the level of unemployment would be there at its original level. So development of industries should be focused if the government is targeting to curb the problem of poverty in the economy. And the last is the provision of social security. Now what is that? The provision of social security. The government should focus on making those people socially secure who are not registered with, who are not employed in the registered firms. So the government has also started schemes to make those casual workers socially secure in their odd times, especially when in their old ages. Like the government has launched Atal Pension Yojana. I told you guys about that in the last video as well. And the schemes like this only, in which you just have to deposit a very little amount on daily basis, and after a span of period like 20 or 30 years, you'll get all the amount in the different installments known as the pension or in the lump sum, and that is completely up to the receiver. So the government is providing, and they are exploring this thing also, that how they can make the people socially secure who are registered or who are employed in the unregistered firms. So provision of social security. Next, we studied about this chart, that what are the possible approaches which can be used by the government, the society, in order to decrease the problem of poverty. Now, what government can do? So, the first is the growth-oriented approach. The growth-oriented approach was basically this, that the government is just targeting one thing, that is growth. The government is not targeting anything. Like, let me give you a very simple example for this. How we can curb the problem of poverty through this growth-oriented approach. Let's say the government has two schemes. Say, the government is saying that we are making FDIs tax-free for the initial 3 years. Means anybody who is coming from the rest of the world to make an investment in India, we are not going to charge any tax in the initial 3 years. Now this would surely attract a lot of investors, and they'll come, they will start producing their goods and services that will increase employment and reduce poverty. There is one scheme. And there is another scheme under which the government is saying that, look, nowadays, from now, we will provide sugar, pulses, rice, and few more eatables on the normal general stores at the reasonable price, at the subsidized price, let's say 2 rupees, 3 rupees or 5 rupees per kg. And by this, the government is targeting to reduce the poverty. What you can observe in these two policies? In the policy 1, the government is targeting towards growth, and that growth would eventually decrease the poverty. In the second one, the government is targeting to fulfill their minimum needs, and through which they are looking forward to reduce the poverty. I hope you got the difference between this, the growth-oriented approach, and this the last one. I coincidentally talked about this only, meeting the minimum needs of the poor. But growth-oriented approach means just focus on your growth. The poverty will automatically get vanished. Simple. So the first one was the growth-oriented approach. What is that? It is based on the expectation that the effects of economic growth, rapid increase in the GDP per capita, would spread all the sections of the society and will trickle down to the poor sections also. So now the thing is this, if the economy is growing rapidly, due to which the per capita income is increasing, which would surely increase their standard of living. Now the repercussion of this, the trickle down effect of this would be like the reduction in the poverty. This was major focus of planning in the 1950s and the 60s. Then next point. Excuse me. It was felt that rapid industrial development and transformation of agriculture through the green revolution in selected regions would benefit the underdeveloped regions and more backward sections of the society. So if we are talking about more industrialization, reforms in the agriculture sector, I hope you are getting the flavor that the government is not targeting on the elevation of poverty. They are targeting growth, and that growth again would lead to decrease in the poverty. But overall growth and growth of agriculture and industry have not been impressive. The gap between poor and rich has actually widened. The Green Revolution widened the disparities regionally and between large and small farmers. So we can say that the agriculture and industrial growth, it wasn't so impressive, especially till the 1991. After the reforms, after the 1991, it was considerably good. But we can say that this has increased the gap between rich and poor in India. The revolution in the agriculture industry, that was Green Revolution, has created a very big difference between the large and small farmers. There was unwillingness and inability to redistribute land. So there are so many sort of problems associated in the rural and the agriculture development, and we should focus on those areas in which we are lacking, whether it is management or fundings or recovery or any other kind of thing. So we should focus on that. Now let us come to the next topic, is the specific poverty alleviation programs. Now what is this? Specific poverty alleviation programs are basically those programs which are constructed to directly benefit the least advantaged section, to convert the poor into, I won't say rich, but yeah, at least to uplift the poor from BPL to at least above the poverty line. So the first specific scheme is the Rural Employment Generation Program. Now, this program aims at creating self-employment opportunities in rural areas and small towns. It was implemented by Khadi and Village Industries Commission. So it is just to aim creating more and more self-employment. Under this program, one can get financial assistance in the form of bank loans to set up an enterprise that generates employment. So Rural Employment Generation Scheme is basically about encouraging the self-employment. How? By providing them cheap credit with the easy terms and conditions, with the easy mode of repayments. So this is what is the government is targeting nowadays. As I told you in the last video as well, that now the government is not targeting in issuing more employment opportunities in the government companies. They are now targeting in the creating more self-employment, and that self-employment may create more employment opportunities. So this is the thing. Second is the Prime Minister's Rozgar Yojana. Now what is this Prime Minister's Rozgar Yojana? The educated unemployed from low income families in rural and urban areas can get financial help to set up an enterprise that generate employment under PMRY. So again, this kind of scheme is basically focusing on the creation of self-employment, but especially the educated unemployed, to the educated unemployed. Now, it generated employment by setting up 7 lakh micro enterprises during the 8th plan of India. By 2003, 3.5 million people got employment under the scheme of PMRY. Now this thing is presenting what? That this Prime Minister's Rozgar Yojana, means employment scheme, is basically focusing on the educated unemployed who are occupied with some skills, with some knowledge, and they are still unemployed just because of the lack of money, or you can say the lack of opportunities. So the government is saying them, why don't you create your own opportunity? If you are short with funds, take funds from us. We'll help you to set up your business and create more employment for others. This is the basic idea and agenda. Third is Swर्ण Jayanti Shahri Rozgar Yojana. SJSRY, Swर्ण Jayanti Shahri Rozgar Yojana, mainly aims at creating employment opportunities for both self-employment and wage employment in the urban areas. The cost of program is shared between the center and state. In December 97, two schemes, Urban Self-Employment Program and Urban Wage Employment Program, were started under this. So there is a separate department for the self-employment and there is a separate department for the wage employment. Then next, Swarna Jayanti Gram Swarojgar Yojana, and that is about the poor families. The SGSY, means Swarna Jayanti Gram Swarojgar Yojana, is a self-employment program. Rozgar means employment, Swarojgar means self-employment. Launched with effect from 1st April 1999, it aims at encouraging micro enterprises and to bring the assisted poor families, means the Swarojgaris, above the poverty line. So basically to encourage them to start up their own micro business so that government can help them to overcome the poverty and to uplift them from the poverty line. By organizing them into self-help group, I hope you remember the concept of SHGs. Self-help groups. These are popularly known as, in the urban cities, are known as the committee system. You must have heard this thing from your parents or maybe some elders in your home that we are going for the committee, sort of things like this. So SHGs is the sophisticated name of that committee system. So this is the thing. Under this program, people who wish to benefit from this scheme are encouraged to form self-help groups. So those people who got benefit from this, who are flourished enough, so the government encouraged them to open up their own self-help group. Initially they are encouraged to save money and lend them among themselves as small loans. Later, through banks and the government provide partial financial assistance to SHGs. So basically, if your business is going good, government encourage you to start lending money to others. Now this word leads to one more source of earning and a platform for those who are searching for funds, who have short of funds, to start up their own business, which then decide who the loan is to be given for self-employment activities. So government is also there to help the SHGs. If SHGs needs more funds, then government would provide. This has now been restricted as the National Rural Livelihoods Mission. Now the fifth one, Sampurn Gramin Rozgar Yojana, SGRY. This scheme was launched with effect from September 2001. This scheme aims at providing wage employment to poor unskilled workers in the rural areas. Now this is basically for those people who are unskilled. Of course, they would be illiterate as well. And just to make them employed, government started this scheme in which they engage people in the low skilled jobs like simply pulling the cart, construction of roads, construction of schools, dams, hospitals in the rural areas. So people starting getting employment under these kinds of things. This program encourages labor intensive work among rural people who are willing to render manual or unskilled services. So as I said that this is purely unskilled, mostly it is unskilled. That is why such kind of work are more of labor intensive. That we just want the human power, we don't want the human brain. Kind of thing is this. The cost of program is to be shared between the center and the state. Fine. So this Sampurn Gramin Rozgar Yojana targets basically the unskilled and the illiterate labor and the rural people. Then it is the turn of the most important and one of the most popular scheme of India, that is the Manrega. What is this Manrega? Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act 2005. Now you must know about this thing that Manrega is, I won't say extremely successful, but yeah, very popular. What does the Manrega targets? How does it works? Among all the policies which we have just studied, this one is the most important. Let me talk about the basic structure of Manrega. How Manrega works. Guys, Manrega works like, say you are currently unemployed and you know where is the office of Manrega in your village. Usually the Gram Panchayat supervise the department of Manrega in their own village. So you know where is the village of Manrega. You went to that office of Manrega in your village and you just registered yourself in that office. That look, I want to do the job. They will issue you a card, a Manrega card. The moment they'll issue you that card, from that moment till the 15 more days, within the 15 days, the government guarantees you to provide the 100 days employment. Manrega is all about to provide 100 days of employment. That since the moment they have provided you that registration card, from that moment to the further 15 days, it is the responsibility of the government to provide you the employment. If they fail to do so, to provide you an employment, then from the 16th day the government is liable to pay you unemployment allowances. So that an individual can earn their, I won't say earn their living, or we should use the word, they can, bear their minimum expenditures. that this act was passed in 2005 and the scheme, that is the National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, was launched in the February 2006. The aim of the act is to provide guaranteed wage employment to every household whose adult volunteer is to do unskilled manual work for minimum 100 days in a year. Under this act, all those among the poor who are ready to work at the minimum wage can report for the work areas where this program is implemented. In 2011-12, nearly 4 crore households have been provided employment. This act also includes National Food for Work program, that is, it is 100% centrally financed program implemented in 150 backward districts of the country to generate wage employment. So, what is this Food for Work program? That at least earn that much which can give you sufficient amount from which you will be able to survive. So this was this Food for Work program, and these were all the specific programs. Let's talk about the next, third, meeting the minimum needs of the poor. Now this is our third category in order to curb the poverty. The third approach to addressing poverty is to provide some minimum basic amenities to the people. If the government be able to provide the basic amenities, now that would lead to fall in the poverty. Like the first one, India was among the pioneers in the world to envisage that through public expenditure on social consumption needs, provision of food grains at subsidized rates, education, health, water supply, sanitation, people's living standard could be improved. So, government is making a lot of expenditure on making the things cheaper, affordable and accessible to the again least advantaged section of the society. At subsidized rate, providing education at subsidized rate, health, water supply and other kind of things. So this is the responsibility of the government to provide such things for everyone, especially the least advantaged section, at a very minimum rate. Second, programs under this approach are expected to supplement the consumption of the poor, create employment opportunities, and bring about improvements in health and education. So, such kind of policy should target that poor people are getting enough of food, they are getting some employment, and their children and even they are getting the good education and health services. Then third one, 3 major programs that aim at improving the food and nutritional status of the poor. So there are some major policies and programs which focus on increasing the nutritional level of the people are PDS, the Public Distribution System, Integrated Child Development Scheme, Midday Meal Scheme, प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क योजना, प्रधानमंत्री ग्रामोदय योजना, वाल्मीकि अंबेडकर आवास योजना are also attempts in the same direction. Fine. So these are the policies which are directly targeting in fulfilling the minimum needs of the poor so that they can focus on other things because the government is there to fulfill their minimum needs. So we are done with the chapter, guys. Now it is the turn of the exercise. Let us move on to the exercise now. There are few questions and let us recapitulate each and everything. Question number 1. Define poverty. What is poverty? Poverty was basically a state in which an individual is unable to fulfill his basic needs. ये एक ऐसा टाइम होता है जब कोई इंडिविजुअल अपनी बेसिक नीड्स को भी पूरा नहीं कर पाता. तो देखते हैं क्या लिखा हुआ है. पॉवर्टी इज द इनएबिलिटी टू फुलफिल द मिनिमम रिक्वायरमेंट्स लाइक फूड, क्लोथिंग, हाउसिंग, एजुकेशन, हेल्थ फैसिलिटीज एक्सेट्रा. फाइन. तो वही जो मिनिमम नीड्स को भी पूरा ना कर पाए वही पुअर है. सेकेंड, हाउ डज एब्सोल्यूट पॉवर्टी मेजर्ड इन इंडिया. हम एब्सोल्यूट पॉवर्टी को कैसे मेजर करते हैं इंडिया में, और सिर्फ इंडिया में नहीं, हर जगह एब्सोल्यूट पॉवर्टी को मेजर करने का एक ही तरीका है. जब मैंने आपको इसका मीनिंग बताया था तब भी मैंने समझाया था. एब्सोल्यूट पॉवर्टी का मतलब दैट व्हेन यू आर कंपेयरिंग योरसेल्फ विद योर ओन पर्सनल पॉवर्टी लाइन, the poverty line of your country. So absolute poverty is measured in India with the help of poverty line. Simple. What is mean by relative poverty? इसका भी मीनिंग मैंने आपको बताया था. Relative poverty is basically that state in which the individual or a firm or a state or a country is poor in comparison to the another. There is some autonomous body, हम उसके कंपैरिजन में गरीब हैं. That is known as absolute poverty. Like मैंने आपको एग्जांपल दिया था इंडिया और नेपाल का. अगर इसमें से एब्सोल्यूट रिलेटिव पुअर देखना पड़े हमको तो नेपाल इज रिलेटिवली पुअर. अगर मैं अब एग्जांपल लूं यूएस और इंडिया का तो कौन रिलेटिवली पुअर है? इंडिया. So this is the concept of relative poverty. Take a look at the definition. Relative poverty refers to poverty of people in comparison to other people, region or nations. तो relative poverty क्या है आपकी? कि एक poverty जो आप किसी और से कंपेयर करने पर पाते हैं, चाहे वो कोई ह्यूमन है, चाहे वो कोई अलग एरिया है, चाहे वो पूरी की पूरी कंट्री है. देन हु आर कॉल्ड क्रॉनिक पुअर. क्रॉनिक पुअर कौन होते हैं? क्रॉनिक पुअर वो लोग होते हैं जो मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम साल के लगभग 12 में से 11 महीने गरीब ही रहते हैं. दोज पीपल who are always poor and those who are usually poor are called the chronic poor. जैसे chronic का मतलब मैंने बताया था, ऐसी चीज जो जल्दी से पीछा ना छोड़े उसे chronic बोलते हैं. तो chronic poor जो ज्यादातर गरीब ही रहता है. State the category of those people who are churning poor, moving in and out of poverty. Those people who are sometime below, sometime above the poverty line. So they keep on coming in and out. So they are known as the transient poor. Transient poor. Then, how does rise in price is responsible for poverty? Very nice question. Guys, rise in price means inflation is, you can say, the core reason behind the poverty. If somebody who is a millionaire today, and suddenly the price level increased very high, then the worth of his millions of rupees would be much less. So inflation or the price level is the only thing which determines your status, your purchasing power. Doesn't matter how much money you have. Say, let me give you a very best example. There are so many currencies in the world which are so weaker than Indian rupees. Like there is a country, Vietnam. The currency of Vietnam is Dong, D-O-N-G. It's almost 320, 325 dongs is equals to 1 Indian rupee. Means when you will pay 1 rupee, you will get 320 dongs. So just imagine that if you are giving 100 rupee note, you will get 32,000 dongs. You are giving 1000 rupee note, you are getting 320 dongs. 2000 rupee note, 640 dongs. Now the amount sounds so big, 640,000 dongs. But in terms of Indian rupees, it is just 2000. Now you can imagine that the price level in that country would be so high. The nominal price would be like 5 lakhs dongs, 2 lakh dongs, 3 lakh dongs. Like if you are going to purchase a jacket over there whose worth in Indian rupees is just like 1500 or 2000 rupee, over there you have to pay like 5 to 6 lakh dongs. So the amount is basically dependent on only one thing, that is the price level. The price level determines everything. And this price level can make you rich, can make you poor. That's simple. So rise in price is a cause of decrease in real income or purchasing power. So goods and services become costlier and poor people become unable to satisfy their minimum requirements. Fine. So the rise in price can easily decrease the purchasing power and can leads to the expensive things in the market because the purchasing power is continuously decreasing, and that will again enable people to satisfy their minimum needs, causing more poor in the economy. Next, define poverty line. Now what is a poverty line? Poverty line is an imaginary line which differentiates between poor and non-poor. So एक ऐसी लाइन जो पुअर और नॉन पुअर के बीच में डिफरेंशिएट कर दे, उसे पॉवर्टी लाइन का नाम दिया जाता है. पॉवर्टी लाइन refers to that line which express the per capita average monthly expenditure incurred by the people to satisfy their minimum needs. Fine. तो ये poverty line. Then next, 8th question. What is this food for work program? National Food for Work program was launched in Feb 2001, which aims at increasing food security through wage employment in the drought affected areas in the 8 states. So where the people are not even earning that much money which can give them a secured life, in those states this kind of scheme is launched, where the government targets that the people should earn at least that much that can give them some minimum food some minimum needs so that they can at least live, I won't say a very healthy life, but yeah, at least a life in which they are able to fulfill their minimum needs. So that was the Food for Work program. So we are done with the question and answers as well, guys, and we are done with the whole chapter poverty. So that was a big chapter, and I would urge all the students to revise, study hard, keep the things in your mind, because again such kind of stuff requires a lot of attention and revision as well. So do come back soon in our next video. Till then, keep revising, study hard, take care of yourself, and thank you so much. Bye bye.